If you're reading through the Gospel of Luke with me, today you'll be reading chapters 11 through 14, and part of what you'll hear is growing opposition to Jesus. He's also teaching about discipleship, and much of his teaching is in opposition to what so many of us see about the world and what's of value or what's important. And in chapter 12, in verse 15, which is our verse of the day, it says, "And he said to them, 'Take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions.'" Now let's just unpack that verse for a moment before I continue. If you look around the United States, I think you could make the argument that there's a whole lot of people who don't believe what Jesus says right here, whether they call themselves Christians or not. It's amazing when you drive and take any kind of trip. How many self-storage unit places do you go by or do you see? It's amazing, right? There's storage unit places all over the place where people are paying money to store stuff they're not even using. And how many people do you know, not to make anyone feel badly, who have a garage and don't put their vehicle in it because their garage is full of stuff? It's funny, I had a comment from someone in my neighborhood about how they never know if we're home because they never see our cars. And I said, well, that's because they're in the garage. We don't sit them outside. Take care, because one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Living simply is simply a better way to live. It's also more in the spirit of Christ. And he goes on then to tell a parable. Now what's interesting is in many study Bibles, this is called the parable of the rich fool. But if you read what happened with this man, many people would say, this is the guy who hit it big. This is the guy who was a successful business person. This was someone fulfilling the American dream. He's a farmer and his farm is successful and he's got more crops than he can fit in his barn. So what's he going to do? Well, he's going to build even bigger barns and put his stuff in there. And while that might seem like a good way of doing business, Jesus says this is foolish, because in this parable, the man who thinks he has all this time in the future to enjoy his goods, that very night his soul is demanded of him. And we don't know how long any of us have. Although if you think about your life in terms of weeks, you probably have less time left than you may realize. So don't spend your life trying to accumulate possessions, Jesus says, but rather strive first for his kingdom. And the essential things we need, maybe not everything we want, will be given to us as well. It's been said we are to live simply so others may simply live. That's a sentiment Jesus would have agreed with.